Welcome back to Richo and Jones.
Yeah, thanks for being with Graham and with me tonight. Look, one of the problems with public administration in any country, but more so in a big country like Australia, is that on the one hand, there's so much happening, but on the other hand, we are so far away from one another that our compassion is in inverse proportion to our geography. That is, on the drought and the bushfires, we feel deeply about how people are hurt and damaged and traumatised, but we're so far away from the reality of the hurt that we develop compassion fatigue. In relation to the bushfires, have you noticed with the passage of time, something else occupies the headlines? And to be brutal, people have forgotten. Ask the people of Tathra on the New South Wales far south coast. They were wiped out 2 years ago. Who remembers them now? All sorts of talk of inquiries into the recent bushfires, but few of the recommendations of past inquiries have been implemented. Waste bin stuff. So the problems are repeated. Those with obvious solutions don't fit the ideological agendas. The modern inquiry has a simple method of operation: fit the conclusion, independently of the evidence, to suit the ideological bias. And the bias is in favour of climate change. Yet nothing, I repeat, nothing, will solve the bushfires tomorrow by dredging up this forlorn talk of climate change. Those who know, including Indigenous Australians I might add, know that the focus should be first, foremost and forever on hazard reduction. So we thought tonight we'd refocus on the bushfires and what should be done in language everybody can understand. People have been wiped out. They've lost everything: their homes, their property, their businesses, their income and their dignity. They're impatient with this ideological crap. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago to Jeremy Griffith, the Australian biologist, he provided some staggering and authoritative observations. These so-called national parks, and that's another story, there are too many of them, these national parks are riddled with eucalypts. Jeremy Griffith said simply, eucalypts are incinerators from hell dressed up as trees. Every farmer will tell you that. Eucalypts are referred to as gasoline trees. Jeremy Griffith said their extraordinary affinity with fire means eucalypts have to be viewed as extremely dangerous incinerators that must be kept away from residential and commercial zones. He also said, and I quote, "Greenies especially should note this. We have to view eucalypts as being like dangerous crocodiles, planted tail down, ready to destroy lives and our world, with estimates of over 1 billion animals having been killed by this summer's fires." Now remember, our parks are full of them. Yet he says, eucalypt forest fires are so frequent, ferocious and destructive that human beings can't live near them, and they're an extremely dangerous habitat for wildlife. Jeremy Griffith says there has to be a complete change of mindset when thinking about eucalypts that recognises their true nature. Now, David Bowman, a forest ecologist at the University of Tasmania, has asked, what the hell have human beings done? We've spread a dangerous plant all over the world. Well, you don't need inquiries, but the real enemy here is ideology and left-wing fanaticism. We thought we'd bring back Jeremy Griffith, and he joins us right here, the Australian biologist. Jeremy, good to talk to you. Thank you for your time. But I mean, you're talking into an empty tank, aren't you?
Yeah, it's very difficult. This is the problem. Humans suffer from an extreme psychosis, and there's a limit to what they want to see, and they prefer just to find some cause they feel good about, and at the exclusion of any rationale or common sense.
See, the last time, Graham, we spoke to Jeremy here, and the last time there were these massive bushfires in Canberra, the Chief Minister then, John Stanhope, said, we've got to stop planting native plants because they're fire traps. Well, he wasn't meant to say that, was he? The end of John Stanhope. They went after him.
Yeah.
Well, the Greens don't like exotics, do they?
But I mean, where do we get... We've spoken about this before. No one speaks to you, but I guess no one's spoken to you about bushfires, have they, about eucalypts?
No.
In government? No one?
No.
Could we speak? You see, you sum it up brilliantly. A recent piece that appeared in The Spectator Australia, you said the management of our forests comes down to how to combat the irrational religious fanaticism of tree-hugging lefties. The religious fanaticism. That's the problem, isn't it?
Everywhere we look.
Here they are here. Look at our pictures. They're all eucalypts. They've survived. Everything around it's been wiped out. They survive. And they allow off the tree all this litter that comes onto the ground, and it's a furnace, isn't it? There they are wherever you go. And we've got a stack of them. We spoke, last time we spoke, not one media outlet reported a word you said, and it was at the height of the bushfires. You were saying basically, just check out these eucalypts. Look at them. They're all eucalypts. You quote the psychologist Jordan Peterson, who has commented on this attachment that people have to climate change as the new religion. You said, people have things within their personal scope of experience that are difficult to deal with and that they're avoiding. And generally, the way they avoid them is by adopting pseudo-moralistic stances on large-scale social issues so that they look good to their friends and neighbours. That's at work here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Explain that human phenomenon.
Well, it's the human condition. Humans suffer extreme psychological difficulty with life, and it's always the temptation to find some cause that brings them some relief from that insecurity at the expense of any rational, sensible, common sense analysis, and so that you end up with this war between this pseudo idealism.
True, isn't it? You see, people feel good by. They call them the doctor's wives, don't they?
Yeah, but I think you're going a bit far. It seems to me that it's not everyone doing this. I mean,
no.
Well, I like to go and find a good cause. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go berserk over it. It doesn't mean I'm going to go trop over it.
But the minority are, aren't they?
Yes, some do. You know, you'll never stop some nutters.
But that's why we've got people, in relation to the bushfires, aren't prepared to accept that hazard reduction. You've got the New South Wales Environment Minister, Matt Keane, says global warming, climate change, because he's responsible for making sure the forest floor is cleaned up, and he hasn't done it.
Reality is, I don't, and you know I'm a big believer in climate change. I do not believe climate change is causing these bushfires. These bushfires have been around for 1,000 years. They didn't start because of climate change. I mean, this is just nonsense.
See, Jerry...
reality is, limit the fuel, you'll limit the fires.
No doubt. Simple. End of argument. End of argument. Limit the fuel. That's pretty good for you. Limit the fuel, you'll limit the fire. Hey, that's good, don't you think? He's done well. But, I mean, people, you're saying, why is it, because you're sort of being a bit philosophical about this, why is it when you can't have fire without fuel and you must reduce the fuel and you must do something about the eucalypts, and the ordinary man says, as Graham just said, well, here it is, what are we doing about it? Why isn't there no action on those basic issues?
And the most basic issue with the bushfires is surely that these things are incredibly fire adapted. They're extremely dangerous, and that's not being fully acknowledged. And the possibility of having to replant our forests, any suggestion of that nature, confronts this problem of the irrationality of fanaticism from extreme left wing.
See, Graham, this man's spoken about this, and no one. I don't mean to offend him, no one takes any notice. I mean, this is like they talk about, believe the science, check out the science. Well, the science, he's argued the science in relation to eucalypts. They're incinerators. He said, you've described them in many different ways, haven't you? And yet no one seems to take any notice.
That's right. And that's the problem. Everywhere we look is this fanaticism of the left threatening the millennials, you know, Jeremy Corbyn and... in politics, just want to share everything, and the irrationality of that, and there's no questioning of that.
There they are. So here we are. This is so important to all of us to understand. You'll be fed this stuff about royal commissions and inquiries and whatever, and yet here we are. We're saying, righto, we're trying to find out what's caused the bushfires, but the left actively work against finding the answer. It's there in front of them. There it is in the pictures, and that's the consequence.
You will never get them to accept that forests should be replanted, that you should take away all the eucalypts and start again with something else. You'll never get them to wear that. They're going to keep hugging the trees no matter what you do.
But here is someone...
You can't have rational argument. That's what you've got to remember.
Very good, Graham. You're right. This man has written about the eucalypts. They have very waxy, oily, flammable leaves, which they're constantly shedding to accumulate beds of fire-fueling litter at their base, and peeling bark that flies through the air as lit tapers to start new fires many kilometres ahead. I was out at Bateman's Bay. They said it just sounded like a bomb going off. And that was one tree exploding to the next, wasn't it?
Yeah, the gases evaporate.
Like a bomb. You've called them fire-inducing incinerators. Well, the forests are full of them, eh? I mean, why are we doing nothing? Gasoline trees. You've said they're frequent, ferocious and destructive. Should human beings be living near them?
Look, eucalypts, we've got to be honest, eucalypts, it's like living with a psychopath in your midst, and if it was a human and a psychopath, you'd lock them up. So we've got to face that reality and think about them sensibly, rather than just get some feel-good relief from hugging them.
But what do we do about them? The whole...
That's right.
I mean, all the trees basically are eucalypts, so we can't chop them all down and start again, can we?
And we've got more national parks than any other country on earth. I mean, America's got 61. We've got 800 in New South Wales.
Well, as Rebecca Weiss reported, in Portugal and Spain, they're starting to cut down the eucalypt forests, saying these are too dangerous, we don't want them. So it's a possibility that at some point, I said, in the future, we may have to come to accept that we need to replace some of our eucalypt forests.
Ours are all over the world. And our eucalypts are all over the world, aren't they?
Yeah.
Been a very successful export, really.
California, Spain, Portugal, and all those fires, fierce fires, are eucalypt fires. And Rebecca says, well, you better chop them down and replant. Graham is right. No one's going to accommodate that. No one will cop that. So we live in the inferno. I mean, what we've just experienced is a minor proportion of the national parks. If it cut loose everywhere, good God, eh?
Yeah, well, it was almost from one end of the mountain range on the east coast of Australia to the other.
How difficult is it to clear fire trails in national parks?
It depends. They've got bulldozers and equipment. They can do it. It's a money issue.
Yes. Well, they locked them up, but it's ideological, isn't it? I mean, the Aborigines always say, we've taught you these lessons and you've failed. They burnt, and they didn't allow this to happen. But here it is here. What concerns me is there's been royal commissions in the past into all sorts of inquiries. Have you ever been asked to give evidence in any of these inquiries?
Never.
Never. Never. Then I spoke to another bloke from Western Australia, never asked. I mean, this is the point. They want the outcome to say, oh, it's climate change. That's what it is, climate change. And Graham has said, he believes in climate change. I don't, but he said climate change is not responsible for these fires. So just very quickly, winding it up, where do we go? Where do we go from here? We keep talking as we're talking tonight. Talk's cheap. What action can be done? Should there be... we hate it. We're just talking to Adam Crichton about less government, but should government get involved here? Will you get anyone in government to say you can't live next to these things? I don't know. What do you do?
I think we've got to deal with the underlying problem, which is the fanaticism of this feel-good industry of the left and the PC movement. Everywhere you look, it's paralysing our ability to think rationally and behave rationally. And so that's what my article in Spectator last week was all about, trying to deal with that, how we can bring rational understanding to the danger of reason versus dogma.
Yeah. Well, I mean, however bad the fires are, Graham, there's a massive inferno out there waiting. The eucalypts are still there. They're still there. So the massive inferno waits for next time. I can't, I've spoken about it, but Graham and I have got no influence whatsoever. We're just talking heads, aren't we? Good to talk to you, Jeremy.
You've got a lot of influence.
Apparently we've got no influence because we haven't made a dent in this one.
But we keep going, don't we?
We're going to keep trying.
Oh, you're a man of impressive influence. I mean, you're one of the doyens of influential figures.
You're both very influential.
We'll take a break. Stay with us.